Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for July 6, 2023. Today, I'm going to begin with an update on developments from the Global South, which have made clear that the era of subservience to the unipolar order has come to an end. We still have a unipolar order which is flexing its muscles, which is asserting its authority, but the leaders of developing sector countries are sounding a very sharp no to continuation of any form of colonial policies. One of the settings of this confrontation was the June 23rd meeting in Paris, convened by France's President Macron, called the New Global Financial Pact. And it was an attempt to rope African leaders and other leaders of developing sector countries into support for a plan from the IMF, the World Bank, and the European Union. But what it did was provide leaders from the Global South with an opportunity to tell what they really think about the radical green policies which are being shoved down their throats. Macron proposed a global tax of $1 trillion to address global warming that would help countries make the transition from what they're doing today to a so-called green economy. Now, one of the mistakes they made is that they announced this would be administered by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and backed by the European Union, three institutions which inspire no confidence at all among countries in the Global South, which have suffered for decades under the austerity and no-growth policies of those institutions. Kenya's President Ruto at this event, after making some comments that were quite negative about the proposal, said to Macron, "You're not listening to us." The strongest challenge came from South Africa's President Ramaphosa, who issued a call for the Inga Dam project on the Congo River to address what he said is a problem that the Europeans don't see, that 600 million Africans are still living without electricity. Ramaphosa challenged Macron to stop talking about a global tax of $1 trillion for climate change and begin by funding this electrification project. He said, quote, "Let's get that done, and then we will be convinced that you are serious with the promises that you make." It is estimated that the price tag would be $80 billion and generate at least 42 gigawatts of electricity, and would have an absolutely revolutionary impact on the entire continent's energy supply and economy. So for $80 billion, you could provide electricity to make up the shortage that keeps 600 million Africans without electricity, instead of a $1 trillion tax to build some windmills and solar panels and provide rakes and hoes. Now, Brazil's President Lula responded very enthusiastically to this. And what he said is that those countries that have the resources that could fund the Inga Dam project have been refusing to do so, refusing to invest in these kind of development projects. He said, such people say, I will help this little thing here, this little thing there. What is needed is a leap in quality. Make investments in structural things which change the life of countries. Now, this was continued at a meeting yesterday of Mercosur, which is the South American Common Market. Lula blasted a proposal to the Mercosur-EU Free Trade Agreement, which would have called for sanctions to be imposed for countries that do not abide by the 2015 Paris Climate Accord. What Lula said about this is the additional instrument presented by the EU in March of this year is unacceptable, referring to those sanctions policy. He said, strategic partners do not negotiate based on distrust and the threat of sanctions. It is imperative that Mercosur presents a quick and forceful response. It is inadmissible to give up the purchasing power of the state, one of the few instruments of industrial policy that we have left, a reference to the obvious point of the contraction of lending to industrial and development projects in South America. He said, "We have no interest in agreements that condemn us to the eternal role of exporters of raw materials, ores, and oil. We need policies that contemplate deep regional integration based on qualified work and the production of science, technology, and innovation. This requires more integration, the articulation of productive processes, and the interconnection of energy, roads, and communications." So Lula essentially presented the idea that we've been fighting for at the Schiller Institute for years of the development of corridors that allow nations to expand trade and trade not just in raw materials, but in finished products and technology, science, and culture. Now, what this shows, these two events, that we've reached the end of colonial and the neo-colonial era of subservience to the global corporate cartels which control credit, trade, and investment. This era is gone. You can do what you want from Europe and the United States to hide behind the slogan of free trade, but in the eyes of leaders of these countries, it's the transatlantic nations, the former colonial powers, which are responsible for the underdevelopment of the former colonies through the imposition of International Monetary Fund, strategic adjustment programs, conditionalities, and the extraction of cheap raw materials and cheap labor. The result of these policies has been poverty, hunger, disease, civil wars, and civil unrest. The Global South is now saying that era is over. Of course, the unipolar powers are not pleased with this kind of rebellion. They're targeting the leaders, the countries they see as primarily responsible for this, Russia and China, because Russia and China are standing up against this new order of the corporate cartels, which is one of austerity, which is one of subservience to the City of London and Wall Street. And besides Russia and China, there were attempts made by Blinken and Biden to lure India away from Russia. But the reality is that at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting 2 days ago, Putin, Xi, and Modi presented a united front for the development that's implicit in the policies of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We also saw the Saudis with the OPEC Plus meeting in Vienna, where they called for further reduction in production, which goes against what Biden is demanding from them. He's demanding more production to lower the cost of gasoline to help him with his 2024 reelection. Well, the Saudis and the Russians joined together to say, no, we're going to cut more. And the Saudis praised Russia for supporting them. Now, in this context, I want to end with a couple of believe it or not stories that just show you how out of touch and what kind of fantasy la-la land the leaders of the Western countries are. The so-called democracies of the fantasy world of NATO. Chatham House, the Center of British Intelligence, announced yesterday that they're awarding Zelensky with the 2023 prize for, quote, new form of modern diplomacy, unquote. Well, in NATO speak and British intelligence speak, that means no diplomacy is the new form of diplomacy, because Zelensky, and under the pressure of the NATO alliance, is refusing to have any negotiated settlement of the war, which is destroying his country and killing his people. Chatham House also announced they'll hold a forum next Monday on, quote, ending the war on Ukraine, dangers of a false peace. What's a false peace? One in which the intention to destroy Russia does not succeed, and instead the West is going to have to accept the idea that Russia had been calling for from before the time of the special military operation, a neutral Ukraine, no NATO in Ukraine, and peace in eastern Ukraine. That's how you get to peace. The danger of a false peace comes from continuing the war. So thanks for joining me today, and check out our website to stay on top of these events and more. Hello, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Support our independence to produce videos like these. Become a member of the LaRouche organization at thelarouche.org/member. By becoming a member for $25 or more, you'll get special access to the EIR Alert Daily Briefing and Weekly Magazine, which is what I read to stay on top of things.